Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Good thing I decided to take today off. My wife and I went and ran some errands. Today's Saturday, August 9th. We went to run some errands. Really hot out there. Got the chicks outside. I came home and I was just really tired. The pump broke on the pond, so I had to deal with that. Figure out what's going on with that. And then I took a nap. From usually my naps are like 10, 20 minutes. I think this one's more like an hour. Got up, went outside, and took my cold bath, and was hoping to get going. And I'm just really out of it. So I did want to discuss a few things while they're fresh in my mind. That I have a great comment I want to get to. Let me do the comment first. And I rewatched the movie Space Odyssey 2001, and it was very interesting, a lot of levels. But we'll come back to that. So the first part is, I gotta go find the comment. Okay, so it's 20 minutes later by my time. I got busy scrolling through the comments. So there's a great comment I want to read from yesterday. But the first comment I saw from today, let me pull it up here. God clearly is using President Trump for his will. His will is in capital letters. So I don't have time to listen to your bullshit. Unsubscribed. I've said that before. It's just that God's will. Why would God want to save America? Why would God feel like this is a godly country, right? Just because you think you're religious or like whatever, that this is blessed by God, doesn't mean that has anything to do with God, right? This is, we're not a godly country. And so he is using Trump, possibly, to destroy this system. Not just for America, but on a global level. That the system has to come down. It's taking us in the wrong fucking direction. I made a video saying, explain to me why you think God would save this country. I know why we want God to save this country. I know why people would pray to God to save this country. But why would God want that, right? It's just like anything else. It's a two-part relationship. People go to God thinking that God doesn't have his own plans, right? There's that saying, people make plans and God laughs. Because there's a divine plan, and, all we could do is figure it out and go along with it. God's plan is God's plan. Our desires are something else. And so, it's a silly thing. Somebody sent me a video of somebody saying I was a disinformation agent. Just, so someone with the, remedial ability to express themselves. There's just stupid shit like that. But then there was this comment. My wife and I are watching TV. And once in a while, YouTube will call my attention to a comment. And the comment came in, I looked at it, and I laughed out loud. I read it to my wife, and then we were laughing. So the name of the video I put out, people don't seek the truth because the truth is too painful. And this person says the guy who denies flat earth, LOL, irony levels at an all-time high. The irony levels are off the charts, and it's sickening. That's a, sort of a adaptation of the great mind of Don Lemons. The flat earth is one of the most bogus things. There's this episode of Gilligan's Island where there's a Japanese soldier, maybe a Korean soldier, I think Japanese, who's on the island. It must be Japanese because of World War II. And he still thinks the war is going on. Like he's just been on Gilligan's Island the whole time. It just happened to run into these guys. But that's a kind of a metaphor for people who are fighting a war. This is not the only time you've seen that kind of storyline where somebody's trapped in the past and still fighting a war that was lost years ago. When I was learning how to self-publish, I published a couple of books. My Friend Within is a kid's book, it was a good book. It's in my link. These things I think are still linked in my description box of my videos. The Choice and My Friend Within. And, I was researching how to market your stuff and all these things. I'm not good at. I don't have a business mind. But there was a great line. There's a guy who wrote a lot of books on self-publishing, and he self-published a lot of books. And there's two apps that you could use. Amazon, which was they had this thing called Create Space, and if you self-publish using Create Space, and I don't even know if that still exists now. I mean, it might have morphed into something else. Amazon certainly has something. You got a storefront on Amazon where you could sell your book, and you got more of a percentage. Like if my book was $10, I'd get $6 if I sold it on my own store. And if I sold it on Amazon, I got $3 or something like that, right? $3 or $4, and Amazon would get $6, right? So, it was not great, not a great deal, but it's I mean, any kind of publisher, there's going to be that kind of thing, right? But before Amazon, there was this self-publishing business named Lightning Source, and Lightning Source was considered, better than Amazon's Create Space, and many people liked using it. And this guy had used it for years, but he said, you can't compete with Amazon. So this is back in, 2012, 2013. And he said, you're fighting a battle in 2011. If you're going with Lightning Source over Amazon, that was lost in 2009. You're fighting a war that was lost in 2009. That it was already over. Like there's no reason to even think about using Lightning Source anymore because Amazon had won. And, this person's accusing me of not being able to accept the painful truth that the world is flat. That battle was lost fucking years and years ago, bro. The world's not flat. The world is some sort of a simulation, right? Three-dimensional reality, planet Earth and our physical bodies are illusions, right? Our real essence of life is our soul. Our soul is so much more than our bodies and our, physical life here. And, it's a small blip on our entire existence, a life of 70, 80, 90 years, and, a soul that's eternal. So the etheric worlds and the stuff that's not three-dimensional, I mean, even the atoms that make up our body, all those things. So, there's different ways of looking at reality. But in the simulation that we exist in here, the Earth is not flat because it doesn't have a fucking working model. I don't even know why I'm repeating this, but it's just silly because, I asked multiple times. So when I was making videos, my family and I were in Sri Lanka. So this is like 2013 or 14. I was going through a divorce and, and I was questioning everything. I mean, I still, I've given up on knowing things because, everything's so, based in illusion, based in disinformation. But I know what I need to do. And I know what, to make my own decisions, I have more than enough information. God provides me with more than enough information, right? But, now I don't care about it. Back then I cared more about these different theories. And a couple of my viewers said the Earth is, there's a new flat Earth movement. Because I mentioned something about like how people used to believe the Earth is flat. And a bunch of my viewers who are, hardcore Christians said they believed that the Earth was flat. So I asked them to explain the model to me. Well, first I showed the model. The old model was the Earth was this flat object and the moon and the sun rotated around the Earth. But that didn't account for, this is before people understood that there was time zones, right? It was before people were able to, there's a time where people weren't able to travel across the ocean because they didn't have the proper navigational equipment. And so they had no idea that there was a country in America and there was no one in America that had the capabilities in these other countries, right? There was no air travel, there's no long sea voyages. And so they didn't understand there was time zones. Of course, as we developed time zones, it became clear that the sun is the Earth. There's some part of the Earth that's lit up by the sun at all time. And so now they had to come up with a different theory, and they came up with that Mobile one. And I asked them to explain it to me. And I said to the guy, they said that there's a sun and a moon spinning around an unknown celestial object. And I'm like, an unknown celestial object? Like, you don't have a fucking theory then, bro. And the model doesn't work. There's no model for flat Earth that works. And it's all these people that subscribe to the Bible. It's Christians. And, it said God said that he picked up the Earth by the four corners. And so they attribute that to being flat. But that's because there was a bunch of ignoramuses living back then. And the Old Testament's a piece of shit book. It's not a good book. The way it treats God, I've talked about this extensively. And so because the word, I used to say firmament, firmament, firmament. If you say firmament 3 times and click your heels, you go to the flat earth. But, there's a lot of bullshit in the Bible, especially the Old Testament. And, trying to apply those remedial fucking teachings for primitive people that were used to subjugate these people in some religious hierarchy that, bullshit these people into giving their money and their allegiance and keep them from finding the divinity within them. This is a bad book. And so I express this, and I've said it over and over again. You don't have a working model that works with a flat earth. You can maybe disprove a round earth, which that is whatever it is. Like if you could disprove that the earth is round, there's a bunch of flat earth clowns that got to go to Antarctica, and they saw that there was whatever it was, a 24-hour day or something. I forget what it was. Somebody sent me the videos. And then they had to go back and tell all the other flat earthers that they themselves were, and everyone else was full of shit, because they realized that whatever they were claiming wasn't true. And the flat earth community immediately turned on them. And these are the same people that do Trumpy shit, right? And so, but in all that, this isn't about you believing in flat earth and me not. My whole point was that people think they know things when they don't. Like, everything on earth is illusionary. Our bodies are illusionary, and things that we think are tangible. And even the colors are, the colors are, if a leaf is green, it is absorbing all the other colors in the prismatic, the bands of light, and this prismatic, there's all these different colors there, and it's rejecting green. It's reflecting green back out. And so all these things are illusionary. And, I don't care about getting to the truth about any of these things, right? But people cling to things out of desperation. So that was kind of the point of my video. And then you have these flat fucking earthers in who don't know that the battle was lost like centuries ago. Because it was disproven. I mean, not just because of these scientists or whatever it is, but because it's just not flat. It doesn't work with the fucking the available scientific data. So anyways, but that's the best part. Let me reread the comment. People don't seek the truth because the truth is too painful, says the guy who denies flat earth. LOL. The irony levels at an all-time high. And then there was one more comment from yesterday. The person said, still surprised that Paul accepts the garbage that Epstein is dead. I don't accept any of it. Like, I don't care about any of it. Like, I don't even know if Epstein ever lived. The whole thing could be disinformation. Like, we live in a world where you don't know shit. Like, all these stories, and, you could get into it. I mean, sitting at your computer and doing research is not going out into the field and talking to people and getting these different things. But, people are all fucking liars. And many people believe their own lies, right? So many people are delusionally believing lies like the flat earth bullshit or these other things. It's like the Democrats who can rightfully talk about Trump's bullshit, but can't own the fact that they promoted a candidate who had clear dementia for 4 years. Someone like Jake Tapper who comes in 4 years too late and writes a fucking book about something I was discussing 6 years ago. So, I mean, it's like silly. It's like, it's not being honest with yourself, right? And part of the honesty is that you don't know anything. Like, we don't know. Like, you don't know what's... Just because there's predictive program... Let me go into the Space Odyssey 2001. So I watched that Stanley Kubrick movie. He's the guy who did Eyes Wide Shut and a number of other movies. And I was surprised to see the movie came out in 1968. So I saw it when I was a little kid. And it was pre-Star Wars. by Star Wars came out in, I believe, 1978 or something like that. 79, I'm not sure when. I think it was before the 80s. But Star Wars came out about 12 years later. And so Stanley Kubrick broke the kind of mold on how to do special effects and space travel. No wonder he was tapped to create an illusionary moon landing. And if you watch 2001 Space Odyssey, you could see some of the effects that he did in that movie could have been used in the fake moon landing. Like it probably was similar things that he did. And so the movie takes place where in 2001 we've established colonies on the moon, and they find this monolith, which they talk about in 2000. And again, spoiler alert, in the sequel 2010, which I'm going to rewatch that one. The monolith makes Jupiter, I believe, into another sun. So now there are two suns and there's other planets to inhabit because of pollution and other things. But they find this monolith buried on the moon, and it's clearly alien technology. And they spend a lot of time. A lot of the movie I had to fast forward because it's long scenes of two guys in a spaceship, and they're just sitting there not talking. And it goes on for like 10 minutes. You watch the spaceship going across space. And for those times, these were mind-blowing special effects. There's a stewardess. They have a space shuttle, which is taking some guy up to these established colonies on the moon. And there's very little dialogue. And this woman is walking in these anti-gravity boots, which is hilarious because, it's clearly just, and she walks like upside down and into this cockpit. And they do a lot of things like that. This guy's running around. And they're these long fucking scenes where they're, showing that they're out in space with very little context or nothing happening. Just special effects showing that this is actually a spaceship. And they're so remedial now. But the things that Stanley Kubrick predicted are, first of all, the space shuttle. There was something like a space shuttle. That was years before they, maybe they had those things in the works and they were designing them. But he also predicted video calling. This guy calls his daughter, and it's like a phone booth, and there's these different corporate stations on the moon, and they have these video phone calls, and he calls his daughter on Earth, and she asks him for a phone, which is kind of funny because it's almost like a reference to cell phones. At the end of the video call, it says he owes $1.60. He's just called his daughter from the moon. It's only $1.60, right? And then there was there's a moment where they're watching a news report, two of the astronauts. And on the table are two flat screen tablet-looking things. They look like a tablet, like an iPad. And, back then TVs were in black and white. The color TV was just coming out. And they had these rounded screens you would have. There was a TV tube that was very much like a light bulb. And flat screen TVs wouldn't come out till I'm not sure when they first, 70s, 80s, 90s, probably the 90s. And they were nothing like the tablets we have today. So there were some other things that they predicted. But the number one thing they predicted was AI. And they had this computer named HAL. And the two astronauts are watching a news report about their trip to Jupiter. So they're going to Jupiter to figure out what's going on with this monolith, because the monolith is sending a signal to Jupiter. It's big classified secret, all these things. And they're going there, and this HAL series, HAL 9000 computers, has never made a mistake. And HAL sends them out to fix something, like a satellite dish. And they get out there, and these things are all, there's a lot of things in there that are predictive technology. So Stanley Kubrick had access to some of these things. And Hal makes a mistake. And he says, well, I don't make mistakes. But they talk to their base, and the base are like, yeah, the guy's fucked. Hal's fucked. And so the two astronauts go into this pod, and they're getting Hal to do everything. Hal closed the pod door. Hal opened the door here. Hal turned the lights on, these things. Because Hal controls the whole ship. So they go in, and there's a glass window. and Hal's reading their lips as they talk about shutting them down. So there's some astronauts in cryogenics. These were all cutting edge kind of things that are there. I'm sure science fiction books and these ideas were out there, but this again 1968. And there's some 4 or 5 people. Hal kills them. Life support. He gets rid of one of the 2 astronauts, and the other one's out there trying to retrieve the other astronaut. He comes back in a pod, and Hal won't let him in. And they're having this conversation, and Hal's like, I can't let you jeopardize the mission, all this other bullshit. And he says, well, I'm going to use the emergency pod. He goes, well, good luck doing that without your helmet. And the guy's like, please, Hal, let me in. He's like, well, this conversation's pointless. I'm going to end it right now, Hal says. But the guy opens up the manual airlock and pops the airlock on the pod and flies into the other airlock and shuts it really quickly, and then goes in, puts his helmet on, and starts to go turn off Hal. And Hal's like, come on, Dave. Don't do that, Dave. Dave, I know I'm not myself, Dave, but I'm better. I know I've made some bad decisions, Dave. So the AI went rogue and tried to kill everybody and take over the ship. And that was 1968. And these scenes are long and forever, but, this predictive programming. So with that in mind, let me... I have a bunch of stuff to get to with the stuff to do with Israel, and then Trump's Nobel Peace Prize, which is just hilarious. And then there's some more Trump stuff on the Epstein. But let's get into this thing with Dodgy. One of my viewers sent me this from the Dodgy Truther, post stuff on Facebook. This guy called the Dodgy Truther. So those of you who know about this guy Dodgy, this clown Dodgy, he was somebody I knew and respected when he was a preceptor and a regular Abhyasi practitioner of the meditation. He was dedicated, donated a lot of money, did a lot of work. I had good conversations with him. He was nominated to be Chargy's successor. Seemed like he was on board, doing a good job. And then he became the master of the system, just lost his shit. And really got stupid. I used to have conversations with him, and he got so fucking stupid, right? And the Sajmark system, no fees were to ever be charged for the cleaning and transmission. You go over a preceptor's house, and you get your heart cleaned and transmitted to. And there's no fees for it. People could buy books. Books were almost sold at cost. And the mission survived on donations. All the masters had jobs. Dodgy owned 7 pharmacies in New York. And then his kids and him got embroiled into some sort of scam. And now his son has been, indicted or something by the SEC. But, they all had jobs, right? And so it says here, look, they've slashed prices on this. It used to be 14,000 rupees, but now it's 999 rupees, which if you're taking it in the U.S., it's $120, right? And so you're one step away from making a decision that will change how you work, learn, and think. In the upcoming 2 weeks, you'll be learning the most powerful AI tools that would optimize the way you work. You will also be receiving sessions, recordings, in case you missed any class. We're glad you made it here. See you in the course. And again, $120, right? For some bullshit course. Learn AI smartly from the best, heartfully. Leverage the most powerful AI tools to work smarter, think sharper, and get more done. Profits go to Heartfulness Education. And the funny thing is they made this video, and Dodgy doesn't know shit, right? They made this video here, and he, this is, this whole thing. He doesn't know shit about technology. He said that when he was on his cell phone, his arm used to go numb. He just doesn't do technology. So, and he doesn't have a technical mind. He's dumb as fuck. And, he's a dumb fuck. And he's like, they're trying to make bank with him being the face of this thing, but he's the last person that would know anything about AI. So this violates the Sajmark principles that you're not supposed to charge any money, number one. And number two, there's technology in the Sajmark system is like they talk about in the Whispers of the Brighter World messages. They talk a lot about how that it's electromagnetic pollution, and it's not good for you, like 5G and 4G, and other things about how it disrupts the glands in your physical body and in your subtle bodies, the energetic bodies that manifest your body and your mind and things. But the idea is that the technology is here, and so use it for good, right? Use it for good. But, it's not, overall, it's not great for people. But there's nothing we can do about it, so make the most of it. And so this thing flies in the face of all those teachings, right? It's 2 weeks live online, the 19th, 2 weeks to the 28th. AI Mastery Boot Camp for Beginners. A live coaching designed for beginners. Date and timing, certificate. You get a certificate. Who is the course for? AI enthusiasts, young professionals, business owners. After the boot camp, you will master prompt engineering research and summarize instantly, create presentations in seconds, automate workflows using agents, just all this stuff, right? So this guy is the guy that's doing the thing here. Create AI avatars and clone your voice. They got it going on. So, it's just a fucking really bad thing. It's so stupid and so against the principles of the system. So anyways, I thought this was kind of funny. So this is an unlisted video on this guy's channel, the Cutting Edge channel. This guy is pictured here. Where is it? Here he is, this guy right here. So this is the guy on the top of the course that's associated with Dodgy, all these things that he is. He is the guy that's doing it with Dodgy. And Dodgy's video, the Dodgy on the Importance of Artificial Intelligence, is on his channel, the Cutting Edge channel, not on Heartfulness. This guy gets more views. So he has 20,000, 30. He has like real views probably here. And he's selling all these bullshit. He's like kind of like a hype man. And there's no references to Heartfulness. Like whatever this guy's participation in this course. Because he's promoting this course, the Cutting Edge School. And so AI trainings for professionals. So he's partnering with Dodgy, probably. Maybe he even approached them. You might go to all the, because there's no, if you search Heartfulness on his site or Dodgy, there's nothing, right? He doesn't have any kind of connection to Heartfulness or Dodgy. So this is, some guy who's running these, things here. So he's not a Heartfulness or Dodgy person. But he probably is running this with a lot of different spiritual organizations. Become an AI engineer, AI avatar, AI agents. And so this is probably all his course. And Dodgy's just providing the name and the fucking sheep, the dopes, to do this bullshit, right? Traditionally you versus AI powered you, and all these things, right? This is just a generic kind of format that they're putting up there. And Dodgy, then they put his fucking stupid ass video, this video here, AI for beginners, this Dodgy thing. And then, all this stuff. Now this is, they started to do these things where they would pose. This is people really meditating. That guy looks like a real rocket scientist there. But some of these other things like here, this was posed. My kids, they were in India and they were participating in this, posing like they were meditating. And I was like, are they really fucking doing that? Because this is after Chargy died. And I saw they were doing that. I was like, well, that's weird. I was glad my kids were participating in something like this, but it was like, why are they pretending to meditate? They should take a picture of people meditate. It was an ashram where people were meditating all the time, but they picked people who were dressed. Everyone dressed up. They had a lot of younger people, a lot of Westerners, a lot of white people. It was in India, and they had these, so they're promoting these things, and it was all posing. And so, thanks, Dodgy. Thanks. I will surely enroll myself. All this stuff. Oh, very nice, Dodgy. I would like to enroll myself. Great. I join. Nice, Dodgy. Will do. Translate to English. Wow. AI meets heartfulness. HI. Yeah. So it's such a fucking scam. He's such a tool, Dodgy. He's such a fucking moron. He's just like, he's just destroyed any kind of credibility over the years with his bullshit stuff that he does. Okay, Sunday the 10th, is it? Yeah, the 10th of August. Wow, August is already fucking halfway over. Big stuff here that I want to get to. Like it's, I didn't want to step on it with the introduction, but, it all blends together. And so this is called The Arena, and this is Casey Hunt with the crazy eye here and the weird hairdo. And so the story broke about Gaza. And, they're taking over Gaza City. Here, let's just watch this. Also, I want to say that I watched 2010 First Contact, which was a sequel to 2001. So I'm going to talk about that at the end of the movie, after at the end of the video.
The fate of Gaza and the future of millions of Palestinians now entering a new and uncertain phase. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now denying that his country will seize and occupy the enclave. Writing on the platform formerly known as Twitter, Netanyahu said this, quote, "We are not going to occupy Gaza. We are going to free Gaza from Hamas," end quote.
Yeah, okay. So I've said forever that Hamas has got to be a Israeli asset, right? And the proof is everything that Hamas does sits into Israel's hands, right? It's just what Israel wants them to do, which is obvious. So just for like ha-has, I made a video called, here, let me find it, called Land Grab. And this was from a year ago. But I had talked about this, and I put this on my Apocalypse Now channel. I couldn't find it. I'm like, I have it as one of my videos. Like, you guys see the images here, right? These things that I've, finally orchestrated, pushed to destroy the ever-shrinking remnants of Palestine. And anybody who's aware of the area and the stuff knows that Israel has slowly grabbed Palestine, right? And that's been their goal. And why wouldn't it be their goal? Like, everybody wants land. Every country wants to expand their land. Like, there's no country, remember these guys? Shmuley, remember this guy sells, his daughter sells kosher dildos at a sex shop. And then Candy went on all this stuff. And so you see this, I often use this, here's this guy talking about all the, their shit they were going to do, and then Netanyahu. But, it's the video was called Land Grab because they have no military. I covered that in this video, right? No military. This is how Palestine was before the partition. This is after. This is how it was in 2025. This is Gaza before. This is how much Gaza was before. And then Israel took all this, what's left by 2005, and they've been building settlements since then. Going back to this, I found this report of what the artillery, this is the stuff that Israel has 2,000 artillery units, 25 surface-to-air missile batteries, 70 surface-to-air missile launchers, and the Palestinians have mobile rockets, right? Like they have no military, right? It goes through the various things here that, the stuff that they have here. They have, massive amount of ground forces, over like 500,000 ground forces and stuff, right? And so all these things. Of course, I often show this image here. So the people who are Zionists, so this includes some Jewish people in Israel, and some Christians, evangelicals. They believe in what's called the Promised Land, that God promised Jewish people Israel in the Bible. It's the promised land. And they left that land. They had it and left it with the Exodus. I guess the Exodus was from whatever happened in Egypt. But they left the land, and it was taken over by Arabs and eventually became Palestine. And so now there are people who believe that God promised them this land. And he didn't. The God doesn't promise shit. It's just, if somebody says God promised you something, like imagine if your neighbor came over to your house and said, I have this book here, and in this book, God promised me your house. Right? You got to leave your house because God promised me your house. And I'm not going to pay for it. Like, I just got to take it, right? I'm not going to give you anything. I'm just taking your house because God promised me. It's silly. Like, it's you can say God did anything, right? So God doesn't promise shit. The Old Testament's a fucking horrible book. And, it treats God, the God in the Old Testament is a demon, not God. But this is what Greater Israel was. So it's parts of Egypt, all these things. I show this all the time. And the people who are Zionists believe that this is, all their land. And Palestine is, just a small part of that, right? And again, this is in 2005, but it keeps on shrinking. And so they've been taking land forever. Like, you can see that they, first of all, there weren't that many Jewish people in Palestine. And then the UN did this to them. And they gave them most of the coastal land. This is the coast here. They gave them a good portion of the coastal land. And by 2000, they had already taken, most of this away from, in terms of what Gaza was always shrinking. And Gaza is the big, whatever. And their land is divided where the Palestinians have to walk through Israeli territories to get to other parts of Palestine. And so they're fucked. They don't have a military. They don't really have a government. They don't have anything. And Hamas keeps on doing things that give Israel an excuse to take the land, right? So it's a land grab. Like, I think anybody with half a brain knows it. Of course, we have this thing with Trump here. This not there. This thing here. No, not that one. This one. I want to show you those other things. I have them up on my toolbar. But this is, this Trump thing. And Trump has this up on his fucking, his Instagram page. And he talked about this, how the Palestinians have just bad luck. And, these bearded men there. And somebody did this as they were just testing out AI. And they did it as a spoof. But Trump took it seriously. And that there would be a Trump Gaza. And, these people here, Trump and this gaudy shit, Elon. And then, of course, those two fat fucks sitting by the pool at Trump Gaza. And, and Trump thought, they think enough of this to put it up on his Instagram page. And, this is what Trump wants. He wants to develop Gaza. And so it's so fucked, right? There was 2 million Palestinians, and now they're doing a genocide and ethnic cleanse at the same time. They want to get them out of the country. Trump just wanted some other country to take 2 million people, right? Like, not in America, but, just we'll take it. You guys, you just have bad luck over there. And then, there's a land grab. And Netanyahu loved what Trump was saying, right? This dude always looks shocked. This is leading to Trump's Nobel Peace Prize. It's a hilarious moment we'll get to in a bit.
He felt compelled to put out that tweet after intense backlash within Israel and around the world after his security cabinet approved a plan for the Israeli military to seize and control Gaza City, which until the war had been Gaza's most populous. Here's what Netanyahu said the day before this was announced.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance.
Free of Gaza. He said, he meant to say free of Hamas, but he said free of Gaza.
Population to be free of Gaza and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel.
So almost 2 years into this war, Netanyahu is now under immense pressure, both at home and abroad. Today, family members of the 50 hostages still held in Gaza held a Shabbat dinner outside the defense minister's home in
Boom. Exactly.
protest.
Look, their kids, they have seats for their kids.
Yesterday, other hostage family members sailed toward Gaza, urging an end to what they called an endless war. But the reality is that Netanyahu's power is, for the most part, unchecked here, and that has led some others to call on President Trump to exert his influence over the Israeli prime minister. Over 600 retired Israeli security officials penned a letter to Trump urging him to pressure Israel into stopping the war. And here is one of Israel's former prime ministers on CNN earlier today.
President Trump is an enormously powerful leader. He has this power in order to use it in a way that can make a difference. Take the leadership and force the Israeli government, because you are the only person that can force the Israeli government to do what needs to be done, and you are the only one that can do it.
Okay, so let's stop there for a second here. So every Trump appointee makes a statement upon taking power, every single one. I've never seen anything like it. Now, U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro. We have a problem with anti-Semitism in this country. FBI, the MBPD, we're going to look at these cases. We're going to prosecute these cases. I will go forward with every case with a vengeance. She's such a piece of shit. Like, just a weird fucking, one of those, plastic surgery, fucking loud, fucking obnoxious Fox people. But we know that all these people take the pledge for Israel. And so Trump isn't going to do shit. It's obvious that Israel is one of Trump's handlers. Like, he has some problems with Netanyahu because Netanyahu, said Joe Biden won, and Trump felt butthurt by that. And, he hasn't really gotten over that. But Trump never wavers in his support for Israel, giving them a blank check. Because Trump's handlers are Israel, the banks, and Wall Street. And, Jared Kushner. And he's totally owned. And so are all his people. And so, there's growing dissatisfaction in the Republican Party with this. And, of course, the Democrats, it's about Palestine. And the Republicans, it's about money and money that we give to Israel and getting sucked into some other Middle Eastern war. But, Trump is never going to waver on this thing. Like, holy shit. This dude's always got fucked up expressions.
All right, my panel's here in the arena. We're going to get started, though, with senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes and CNN chief global affairs correspondent.
Yeah, well, we don't have all the details of the plan. What we do know is that it's supposed to get underway on October the...
There's some things here.
About his response to what's happened or what was announced earlier today in Gaza. But our goals are very clear. We want to make it so that Hamas can't attack innocent people. We want to solve the humanitarian problems in Gaza.
And of course, that's one thing that we have been reporting on, that President Trump has become fixated on the humanitarian crisis that is happening in Gaza. One other thing to point to.
The state of Palestine. How do you look at this, and how would you frame up the calculation, the trade-offs that Netanyahu is making here?
Well, ironically and devastatingly, Hamas's original goals of October 7th to cause Israel to react in a way that would alienate the rest of the world, that seems to be continuing to succeed. Because
that's what you think's happening here? That they thought that Israel would go do this stuff, and they were willing to lose 100,000 of the Palestinian citizens to make Israel look fucking bad? They're going to take Gaza, and they're going to kill everyone in Hamas. And America's going to back them like they fucking know this. No, they're a fucking asset. Like, Jesus Christ, like the remedial level of analysis.
By Hamas rejecting the 60-day offered ceasefire and coming back with its own proposals, that stymied that. And now Israel, with U.S. backing, has gone for essentially almost the maximum campaign. Now, there's a term of art that Netanyahu is avoiding using by saying he's not occupying Gaza. Of course, Elliot can weigh in on this. That means under international law, Israel would not be responsible for governing Gaza. So perhaps.
Okay, so let me there was, I don't know if it was, I think this is the same report, and there's some guy on there. I'm not going to go find it. I think I've got it on the TV, but I don't need to do it. But some guy said, either way, this is an occupation, right? There's a couple people that were saying this, which clearly it is, right? So after that, Trump has a press conference, and these dudes are talking about him getting the Nobel Peace Prize. Let me go to that because that's fucking hilarious. Okay, so this is from a while back. I want to show you this first, right? This is Trump and Netanyahu. This is Netanyahu's visit. I think this was at the time when Trump said we should resettle Gaza, and America's taking control over Gaza because we just can, because they've had bad luck there, all that shit, right?
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, do you expect phase 2 of the hostage deal to go forward?
Let me talk to you later.
Mr. President, you managed to get this deal done. A lot of people say that the men who managed to do that should get a Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think that you'll be able to get all the hostages back home? And what would happen if you hear from the...
See, look at him. Look at how smug he is, right? Now, this is probably an Israeli reporter, and he has these shills that talk about this. Trump has talked about this numerous times. This is just one of them.
They will never give me a Nobel Peace Prize.
What would happen if Israel...
And it's, his victim consciousness is off the charts. It's too bad. He's just always poor little Trump. Poor little Trump. They'll never give me a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, Nobel Peace Prize is a piece of shit because Obama got it twice, and he was one of the worst warmongers. He doubled and tripled down on all those Bush wars that were going on. I mean, all the stuff that George W. Bush had done. And then he was really hard on whistleblowers, and he created all that fake ISIS stuff. And then he did the war in Libya. He went with all the neocon agenda. And then the other, he started it on Syria. So Obama was the worst. Like, Obama spoke with a Muslim accent, with an Arab accent. And everyone said, oh, my God, he's a man of the world. And he was, one of the worst. And they gave him 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. So the thing's a joke anyway. And Trump shouldn't even want it, but he does want it. Like, he wants all these things.
Deserve it, but they will never give it to him.
He deserves it. He deserves a Peace Prize.
But they will never. I deserve it, but they will never give it to me.
What would happen, sir? What would happen if phase 2 to go forward? What needs to happen for normalization in Saudi Arabia?
Well, we're going to see.
Okay, so he always says this, right? He says he deserves it. He wants it. This is something Trump has talked about quite a bit. Like, he's brought it up himself. He's got these shill reporters that bring it up for him. So they went from this report on Gaza on CNN, and then they went to this press conference, and this is a longer version of it. And when I started watching, it was hilarious. And I was doing other things, but I came back because it was so fucking funny. And so Trump wants these guys to talk about him getting Nobel Peace Prize, right? But before this is the Armenian president here, and this is the Azerbaijan president. And they've had beef or whatever, and Trump has solved their beef by giving them both something, right? And this guy's going to talk about it here.
I think they have the potential to have a great personal relationship, which is always good, but also a great just relationship. And if I might, may I ask you to say a few words, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, thank you for invitation. It's a big honor to be invited by the President of the United States for this historic event. Actually, we are writing a new history in a bilateral interstate relationship between the United States and Azerbaijan. We are starting the path towards a strategic partnership. The Charter on Strategic Partnership will be elaborated within several months, and that is a historic achievement for Azerbaijan, because to be in the format of strategic partnership with the greatest country of the world is a great opportunity and also a very big responsibility. And this strategic partnership format embraces so many important areas: mutual investment, trade, energy, connectivity, transit, AI, defense sales, counterterrorism. So all these areas where we had and...
Okay, so Trump's just given these guys both something. and they've agreed to a peace deal because of it. And that's important to understand, right? Because unless they get something from America, they're not, they've had beef with each other for a number of years. There's all these countries that, have skirmishes, India and Pakistan, all these countries. But if America comes in, Trump comes in and he gives them something, he gives something that they can take back to their people, he gives them some sort of a deal, whether it's military stuff, energy, any of these things, then they can say, hey, look at what we're getting from America. And both countries walk away happy because America is giving them something. And Trump can say, hey, look, I'm brokering peace deals, right? And so, and Trump wants to say that because he says it all the time. He brings it up all the time how he's creating these peace deals, but he's giving away shit, right? You could go through it and find out what he's giving away, what it's going to cost the American taxpayer, whatever it is. And, all these things that Democrats do, all these things that the wasteful spending that Doge was supposed to, remember Doge? Like what happened to Doge? Doge is dead, right? Elon Musk is gone. And now he's just got this massive spending bill, the big, beautiful bill that he didn't write or read. And he just pitched it. And it's like, it's a neoconservative, dystopian fucking nightmare bill. And then he's got these other things where he's just giving away stuff, giving these countries something so that he can say he's brokering peace. And then say, hey, they'll never give me a Nobel Peace Prize. So then watch this part. This is the funny part.
It's a question of your guests and also of you.
Yeah.
Of the guests, will the Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh be allowed to return? And also, do you have any thoughts on the talk about President Trump winning the Nobel Peace Prize? And for President Trump, you're working on resolving two other major conflicts. In Gaza, you've spoke of resettling the Gazans. The country of Somaliland has expressed potential interest if you were to diplomatically recognize their independence. Are you inclined to do so? And also, did President Putin present an award to Mr. Witkoff during their recent visit?
He likes Mr. Witkoff, I can tell you that. That's true. Please, go ahead.
Please go ahead. Talk about my Nobel Peace Prize. So he's got this shill. They have these shill reporters in there now. I said this during his first term, that he should bring in more independent people. But he's brought in the worst kind. They're just pro-Trumpers. They're just Trump yes man, people who are bloggers and, podcasters who, not bloggers, podcasters who just, lavish and, drool all over Trump, taint lickers. And they ask him the questions he wanted asked. And Trump wants this question asked because Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize. It's pathetic how much he wants these, for a guy who talks about the establishment and fake news, why would you want a Nobel Peace Prize? Like, why would you want these people's approval? I mean, anybody who's a real truther, why would you want approval from people who are, power-hungry, evil, demonic fucks, right? Like, well, why would you want that? Like, I talk about that with Don Lemons. Don Lemons talks about how he's no longer legacy media, but if CNN and MSNBC offered him a job, he'd come running, right? He'd drop all the bullshit he's doing, because these people want the establishment's approval. They want to be part of the club. And Trump desperately wants to be part of the club, which makes him not what these other people think he is, right? It clearly isn't that, right? So, but here's the answer here. So look at this guy. He's laughing at it, right? Because Trump himself or his people told both these guys to go in hard about how Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Because Trump has given them shit and said, I'm giving you a bunch of shit, but make sure you talk about Trump becoming a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And then they had this reporter ask this question, this shill reporter, which he was probably told, why don't you ask this question and Trump will be happy with you, right?
I think President Trump deserved to have a Nobel Peace Prize. And
crazy. It's crazy, he said. You never thought. Look at Trump trying to act humble.
We will defend that, and we will promote for that, and that's obvious. So, and today's event, I think, is a very bright expression of that, and hopefully, you will invite us.
Oh, yeah.
to
front row. You'll be front row.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We are in favor.
Thank you. Thank you.
What about you? What about you? Trump's looking at the other guy. Look at him. What about you? Say some nice things. Like, this is from fucking, this is petty little, small little fucking microscopic ego that needs constant stroking.
Can I have a suggestion?
Yes.
So maybe we agree with Prime Minister Pashinyan to send a joint appeal to Nobel Committee to award President Trump with the Nobel Peace Prize because
Crazy. They're both in on it. Woo! And so is the audience. Everyone's like in on it. Like you have no idea what he's giving away in terms of American whatever he's giving away for this moment, right? Like Trump doesn't care about giving away your money so that he gets a Nobel Peace Prize, because that's what it takes to, if two parties are having beef, right? You either have to side with one of the two parties, or you have to give something to both of the parties. Like you either have to go with one side, like Trump tried to with Russia. He tried to go in on Russia and say fuck you to Ukraine and get Ukraine to crumble and then come begging for peace, right? But they didn't do that. But, the other way is that you give something to both countries. But America's already given the Ukraine so much, and they've laundered so much of Biden's money through the Ukrainian bullshit, and they're so, locked in on this thing. He can't do it with them. But he could do it with India and Pakistan and some of these other countries. Like he could, especially if they're not getting anything from America, or they're getting very little. And America gives a lot of shit, and sometimes it comes back. There's some way it's reciprocal. But, this kind of deal, two countries who don't want to give in to each other are getting something from Trump in America, right?
from the leaders of the countries which were at war for more than 3 decades, having this historic signature here, it really means a lot. They've
been at war for 3 decades. And Trump has given them something so that they don't want to go on war anymore, right? So that they're signed a peace deal because Trump's given them stuff, right?
This tangible.
This guy was talking about all the deals. They now have a trade partner in America, and so some of these small countries that America doesn't fuck with, right? Trump comes in and says, "All right, I'll give you guys a deal," and maybe the deal does something for America, maybe it doesn't, but it certainly does something for him and his country, and the other guy's country and the guy himself. So they can walk back to their countries and say, "We got to deal with America," these smaller countries, right? And, Trump is giving them stuff. All they have to do is, tell everyone how Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize.
Result of President Trump's leadership. And no one could have achieved that. There have been many presidents here since beginning of 90s. And the so-called Minsk process, which, by the way, today we put an end to with my Armenian colleague, started in 1992. So negotiation under the auspices of OSCE continued for more than 3 decades without any result.
There's nothing worse than those decades. I mean, dude, you got to get rid of the decades. We go back.
Continued for more than 3 decades without any result. So who, if not President Trump, deserves the Nobel Peace Prize?
Exactly. No one else. In fact, they should strip all the other Nobel Peace Prizes away, and Trump should be the only winner. They should take back all the other ones and give them to Trump.
I don't want to go into the history of some very strange decisions of the Nobel Peace Committee to award the prize for someone who didn't do anything at all.
You mean Obama? I think he's talking about Obama. But so he's shitting on Obama too, which is great for Trump, right?
But President Trump in 6 months did miracle. So I think that my Armenian colleague will support it, and judging by the reaction of the audience, I think as soon as we come back, we will agree to issue a joint letter. And hopefully, and I also join when President is awarded, we hope that he will invite us to the ceremony.
You certainly will be. Thank you very much.
Do we have draft to sign now?
I can't wait. Look at him. So look at him. Oh, look. Stop it, you guys. Just stop it. Stop it, you guys. No, I don't. Trump can't even pull off like fake humble, like the worst fake humbleness. And it's hilarious because, you know, Israel's only, I mean, Israel can't do shit without the United States. You know, Israel is like America's like biggest parasite. You know, there's a video I'm not going to show you was with, I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she was interviewed by Tucker Carlson talking about how Israel owns all the politicians, you know, AIPAC and all these, you know, these foreign lobbies, not just Israel, but Israel particularly. But what they're doing in Gaza City, and they're occupying and doing a land grab and all that shit, and Trump is probably the only one that can stop them, and he's not even blinking at what they're doing. He's talking about the humanitarian crisis as Israel does more bad shit, right? And just allowing them to do all that. And, you know, that's the worst one. I mean, the Russia and the Ukrainian war, which is, you know, a whole another thing, that's not really as bad as what's going on in Gaza, because the Ukrainians were heavily militarized by America and are still receiving things from America, and even under Trump. And they have a military, and they have, you know, the ability to fight Russia off to some extent. And they're, you know, there's mass casualties on both sides, where, you know, Pakistan is just getting rolled over. The Gaza Strip is just getting rolled over. It's not just the Gaza Strip, it's also the West Bank. And at some point, Israel's just going to own it. Like, they're going to own it, and there'll be shit going on in the world, and they'll just be like, all right, we've grabbed onto it, people will be pissed, and the UN might do some bullshit sanctions or something that America won't back, and Israel will then have this, you know, this really great beachfront property with, you know, offshore oil and these other things. I mean, they'll more than get compensated for their efforts, and they'll be just done. Palestine will be disappear, and then Israel will move on to their next thing. And Trump is completely fucking responsible for all those, you know, those deaths that have happened since he's been president, and all the shit that Israel's doing since he's been president. And they've been doing a lot of shit. And he's partially responsible for what they did under Biden, because he was, you know, all about it, right? And they knew as soon as Trump got his second term, they could keep on going. And so they went for it, and they screwed Biden and Kamala Harris in the process, because they hesitated. You know, they gave the mildest of criticism to Israel. And so for him to come in with this bullshit Nobel Peace Prize, and it's just hilarious. It's just fucking hilarious. I mean, just all, not hilarious in the sense of human suffering, because that's horrible, but, you know, this part. So I was going to show you some stuff to do with some more Trump Epstein stuff, but I'll just skip it for today, Sunday. Take a day off from that. I'll just cover it on Monday tomorrow. This video will be up on Monday, and then I'll, you know, and there'll be new stories, because they start the week with some, and there's still some leftover ones over the weekend. Like, it's just not going away. But, you know, there's a lot of people in Israel, Jewish people, who are really bummed about what their country's doing to Palestine and Gaza. And, you know, there's these groups that are, you know, based in Israel, where they show video clips of the Palestinians. I mean, I don't know, if it'd be friends or whatever. I liked these groups years and years ago. And there's people in Israel who are very adamant about the, you know, they're liberal people. They're against war, and they know what's going on there. And so here,
Israel right now, massive protests are being seen across Israel right now after Israel's security cabinet approved a plan from the prime minister to expand its military operation in Gaza and take full control of Gaza City. Benjamin Netanyahu explained the objective of this escalation this week.
So, you know, these are people in Israel who know what's going on here and are upset. You know, they're good people, or they're people on the right side of things everywhere. But, you know, it's like people think it's like all one country. But they know it's wrong, right? If they know it's wrong in their own country, right? Like, what do you think? These people are just, you know, horrible people that are traitors to their country? No, they see the atrocities that their government's committing.
In order to assure our security, remove Hamas there.
It's all about security.
Enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to
we saw this already.
Pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas, and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel.
An Israeli source tells CNN that the goal is for the first phase of the plan to be complete by October 7th, the 2-year anniversary of the Hamas terror attack.
Crazy. It's the plan will be after October 7th. It's the second year. It's like it happened, 2 years ago, and that whole thing. And the plan is gonna, when when the operation, the USS Liberty was attacked by Israel, and they tried to sink it. It was a satellite boat that was there to gather information during what I think was the 6-Day War. And you can watch it. Al Jazeera has a great piece on it. And the American Navy men who are on that ship, they hate Israel and they're pissed by this, this ally bombing them purposefully. And, they kept on, they hit them with the fucking torpedo after they bombed the shit out of it. And there's like 13 or 14 Americans were killed, and there was like body parts all over the fucking boat. Israel like fucking bombed the shit. The boat just wouldn't go down, and they're hoping to sink it, and they were going to blame it on Egypt, and so they're going to get Americans to do their fighting for them because that's the kind of bullshit they do, right? And Lyndon Johnson, when he first thought it was Egypt, told them to scramble everything, and there were all these fighter jets up in the air. Then he found out it was Israel. And he turned the jets around. And Israel came then to the aid of the ship, and the Navy men were all giving them the finger and fucking yelling at them because they were, there was bullshit, fucking whatever it was. But Lyndon LBJ was so scared of Israel after what they did to his former boss, right? They were a part of that whole fucking Kennedy thing, JFK assassination, more than likely. And then they had a negotiation, and LBJ found out that one of his key cabinet members was also working for Israel and Mossad and leaking his negotiation. And so Israel decided to give America back $6 million. Of course, we're giving them $3 billion a year now. One for every dead person in the Holocaust, which is a total dick move. Like, so they paid America $6 million for their fucking crime against their act of war. And they said, "Oh, we'll give you $6 million, one for every, money that they're getting from people who work in America and donate back to Israel, all this shit, or the money they get from the American government." So it was such a dick move. And then, they're also always this victim consciousness and all this bullshit, right? And so
that started this war, a deadline chosen intentionally for its symbolism. That plan will include the forced evacuation of about 1 million Palestinians from northern Gaza to the southern part of the enclave. The move is drawing criticism from around the globe as the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsens by the hour. The families of the Israeli hostages.
So, we know what this is. Land grab, right? It's fucking land grab. So one of my dopey Facebook friends, why doesn't the media remember this? Trump being given the Ellis Island Award for contributing to the conditions of inner city black youth, standing alongside Muhammad Ali and Rosa Parks. Because Trump has done a lot of bad shit since then. Yeah, he did this thing way back when, and he did some other things. But, you don't, the media hating Trump is partially their job, and there's a lot of it's staged and political theater. But Trump has done horrible shit, right? And like these fucking Trumpers, like, what's it going to take? What is Trump going to do that you finally go, oh my God, this guy sucks? Like, there's nothing he can do. And a lot of it's disinformation agents and paid people or whatever, but it's just fucking so egregious. All right, let me get to the 2010 thing here. So I saw the movie 2010, First Contact or something like that, which is a much better movie. Both of the movies, 2001 and 2010, were based in the books by Arthur C. Clarke, I believe the name it was. And this one was not directed by Stanley Kubrick. Now, Stanley Kubrick, I have to look through all of his movies, but the ones I've seen, Clockwork Orange, my wife and I were talking about this, Eyes Wide Shut. When I watched Eyes Wide Shut, I was like haunted by it. Like, it was so creepy. And it was just, and I was telling my wife about this, felt totally unsettled after seeing it. And so that was 2000s, whatever it is. I think I watched it with my ex, who was probably really triggered by it because she got triggered by all that kind of stuff because of her her abuse history by her parents, sexual abuse by her dad or whatever it was. Her story was always from a standpoint that she was always the victim, so that was part of it. But she had this stuff that happened with her family. But I was really like, it was probably the creepiest movie I'd ever seen. The one that left the most lasting, uncomfortable feeling afterwards. Really weird movie. And some years later, I saw a video on YouTube where there's this guy who was from Buffalo, New York, and he was someone who really knew a lot about symbology. And he talked about all of the things in the movie. And he had talked about it with some friends who saw the movie, and then they were disturbed, and he explained it to them, and they were like, oh, you should make a video about this. And he talked about all the symbology, all the stuff there, the stuff that ties, I don't know if he talked about the ties to the Rothschilds family, but that was also, well known. And it made so much more sense to me. And that's when I got into symbology, and I started to understand this myself, and I started covering things like this. And so there was some Illuminati stuff, the singular eye, as the end scene in 2001, and some other things, the monolith stuff. And in the 2010, there was a young John Lithgow, and they had to reconnect the computer HAL. And the Jupiter was being turned into a sun, and 3 of Jupiter's moons were going to be planets that were inhabitable. But there was a message saying, stay away from the one planet, the moon that's a planet for that's around Jupiter, but you guys can have the other 2. And so that's how kind of the movie ends. But it's a much better movie. But while they're waiting to see if HAL is going to turn on them again, because they need to get away from Jupiter as it's being turned it's going full moon. I mean full sun. They turn into a sun. Did I say moon earlier? And they don't know if HAL's going to choose to survive rather than die using up the rest of the energy. They're on the board of Soviet craft, and they've hooked up to the craft from the one HAL is in charge of from the previous movie. And they keep on going back to John Lithgow standing there, and there's a big 6 behind him. And they always do this where there'll be a 6 next to somebody, and the person will be standing, there'll be a 6 behind them. Sometimes it's in a parking garage, sometimes it's in a like whatever. There's just a 6 on the wall for no reason, and it goes back there 3 times. They do these kind of things, and they've always done these things. But the first movie was made, the Stanley Kubrick movie, which was much worse. It's hard to understand, long scenes that were just unnecessary, especially nowadays. It doesn't age well, the movie. The 2010 movie is quite a good movie. I think it was less popular, but it was a really well-done movie. But Stanley Kubrick made a lot of shitty things, like he just creepy stuff. I have a list here coming from ChatGTP. So, Lolita, 1962. That's, the girl's a sexual abuse movie. Dr. Strangelove, Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, The Shining. And there's, of course, Eyes Wide Shut, some of these other things that aren't listed. But, a lot of creepy fucking, a lot of creepy movies from him. But anyways, what I realized watching the first one, which was made in 1968, and the other one's made in 1984. So I graduated high school in 1982. So I was in college, whatever it was. Probably watched that movie a couple years after that on cable TV, probably in 85, 86. And, those people look ancient. Like when I was a kid and I would watch movies, black and white movies from my parents' era, movies from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, TV shows from the 50s and 60s, Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, these kind of shows. And, it was clearly the people were different then. A lot different than me and my generation. And now I look at these movies that when I grew up, and they look like they were made in the 20s and the 30s. I can't believe that they were, again, it was 40 years ago, but still, it's, people have changed so fucking much. There's a lot of predictive programming, and there's things that are kind of impressive, and You know, I was in high school. We had these two big giant computers that were the size of refrigerators, and they were, you know, I mean, just remedial. They barely did anything. They were not. They were probably 1/1,000,000th of your cell phone's capacity. I mean, I'm not exaggerating here. They were so remedial. Like I, you know, worked on the computers a little bit. I'm like, you know, it's kind of interesting what it could do back then, but compared to what they have now, of course, these were computers in high school. They had, you know, better computers in other areas, but still in the 80s, you know, not until the 90s did computers, home ownership of computers become a thing, and then eventually cell phones and the rest of these things. And they've changed technology. They've changed the human being so much. All these technological developments, and you think about all the things that have happened, and some of them are good, but most of them aren't. And people are just more degraded and just everything because of it. You know, what I cover here is, and this is one of the reasons that being a truther, being a crazy conspiracy theorist, where they spit conspiracy theorists like you're some kind of a leper. Oh, you're just some crazy conspiracy theorist. Well, that's what conspiracy theorists believe. That there's nothing more lethal to our modern day civilization than truther stuff. Because there's a lot of bullshit truthers out there. There's a lot of, you know, people who just want a partial truth. But when you really look at our civilization in an objective way, it's not just the scams and the conspiracies and the you know, the system being corrupt. It's taking humanity in the wrong way. And that can't be reversed, at least in terms of a systemic change. The system has to collapse for people to start going in the right direction. We're worse than we were. Each generation's worse than they were before. I mean, that's, you know, I think everyone can see that. And when that's the case, you're fucked. If your system is taking you in an unnatural, demonic direction, away from God, away from the divinity within you, away from, you know, the natural, what it's like to be a natural human being on every level, physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. And people are getting weaker and weaker and all fucked up and all psychological issues and, you know, fucking physical issues and, you know, autism and all these various things that are springing up and, you know, all the gender stuff and all the fucking ways people are becoming just an abomination and just, you know, worse than they were before. There's so much, you know, not just on a physical level, but a spiritual level and the immorality and the, you know, the entitlement and the weaknesses and just, you see it, like people are getting worse and worse. And when that's the case, there's only one fucking solution. That's the system collapsing. And then people trying to regain what they've lost, which is no easy fucking task, right? Because having lived on a homestead, you know, it's not that easy to go back and start building a community and do the things you need to do to survive. Like people think, you know, that it was hard back then. I mean, most people look at the life where tribal life and village life is being hard because they didn't have the comforts. But I mean, it's more than just that. And so it's changing your whole orientation to life, which people are just not capable of doing. So, you know, there's some point where you realize the system's fucked. And in the truth community, like it's a way of demonizing people by calling them black-pilled, right? Like black-pilled is some sort of a choice, right? Like you're choosing to look at it a certain way, but the evidence is overwhelming. We're going in the wrong fucking direction. Who can deny it, right? Like the obesity epidemic and the stupidity and the idiocracy, we all see it. When you watch the movie Idiocracy and you go, yeah, that's totally happening, right? Like that's not fucking just a joke in a movie or a premise. It's literally happening. And just the degradation, look at the presidents, the way the presidents used to act, and the way the last couple of presidents, or since Clinton and, you know, and all the Bushes and all of it. Like the way they've acted since then. And I'm just talking about how they act, never mind their characters or how the people they are. But just, you know, what you expect. Donald Trump regularly swearing. You know, I swear, so I'm not like saying, oh yeah, it's just like he's horrible. But there's a degradation there, right? And, you know, you see it across the board. And just the blatant, like, lies and corruption that are just right in your face. They used to hide it better. Not that I'm saying that was a good thing, but there's a degradation there, right? And everything's more acceptable than it was before. And so when you look at all that stuff, there's just, oh yeah, of course we're fucked. Like, how do you not think we're fucked, right? Like, where's the non-fucked part, right? And the other part is the part that's fucking us, the part that's taking us in the wrong direction. If you ask people to give that part up, whatever it is for them, it's like asking a person to give up their addiction. The thing that's hurting them the most. People know that their alcohol and their gambling and their sex addiction and their drug addiction or any number of things, their video game addiction or their internet addiction or anything that's there. If you ask them to give it up, and even though they know it's destroying their life, they won't. Or if you tell them, this thing's destroying your life, you got to give it up. And they're like, you're right, but I can't. And so that's the other part about this. Like if the system was fixable, which it's not, it would come from people seeing what's hurting them and not doing what's hurting them. Did I talk about liquid death? I talked about it with my wife. I saw a little video clip or something, a commercial, maybe a CNN thing. I don't know what it was. But it was this guy who created this thing called liquid death. And he was, talking about going from nothing, whatever he started the company, to being a multimillionaire. And then I was in Meijer. I don't go to the store like I usually don't go to Meijer. But I was in Meijer, and there was this big display of liquid death. And I've seen it before, and I'm like, how the fuck do you drink something that says liquid death? But that's actually a good marketing strategy. People want to drink fucking something called liquid death, right? And some of these other poisonous things. Another piece to this is, so I don't know if you guys remember, I think her name is Little Tay. I did a thing on her, years ago, where her dad was like some kind of Svengali and this 12-year-old Asian girl who looks like she was 7. And she would swear, and they accused her of appropriating a culture, and she was trying to be a tough rap girl. And she was making bank. And she was really pathetic. I mean, and her dad was exploiting it, the whole thing. And so I think I saw in the New York Post that she did some sort of OnlyFans, and she just turned 18. So she did OnlyFans, which is, these girls that show naked pictures to members or whatever it is. And it was promoted as don't tell my mom kind of thing. Like her dad's her manager. And she made $1 million in 1 hour. Like that's just how creepy this fucking shit is, right? Like I'm sure she looks like she's like 4'5", really small, young looking person. So she's like an Ariana Grande that always looks young. Where they used to dress her, she was like 25, 26, and they were dressing her in schoolgirl outfits and things like that, like promoting that kind of weird shit. But then I just saw that Iggy Azalea made $48 million from her OnlyFans. And so, like the degradation, I mean, and she said, well, it was a little bit less than that, but still was life-changing money. And so you have these, my God, right? People drinking liquid death and these fucking, all this perverted shit and all this crap out there. And people are just degraded, low vibrational, and they're not giving up their lower shit. Like, people have tendencies to go to the lowest common denominator. Like if we all really move towards our spiritual nature, like if we embraced our spiritual nature, we'd see a transformation of our society. God is always within us, and there are always spiritual movements. There's always, the good part of a religion. Like people can embrace the higher nature of their religion. Then why don't they? Why don't people do that? And why do people who do it for a little bit end up falling back down and going in a degraded direction? And so if that's the case, then, aside from the system, you need people to participate in their own rescue, right? In their own redemption. And people just don't do that, like collectively and individually. And if you look at history, you know that that's the case over and over again. Like some people change for the better, but it's just a rarity, and it's not just anything significant. One thing, like they give up alcohol or, one little thing, begrudgingly, but they still, If you look at the content that's out there and all these shows and stuff on the internet, it's just all fucking degraded. And people aren't like saying, oh, like, let's go in another direction. They're like, well, this was pretty bad, but can you show me something grosser? Like, is there, liquid death, that's okay. But is there like liquid sell your soul to the devil? Is there like can we have something like that's so lame, liquid death. Is there something worse than that, right? And so, all of these things. All right, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.